Now we're ready to create our web page. So before we go ahead and start creating this page, let's take a look at what we're going to create. We're going to recreate this page here. This page contains a header, which is sticky, so as you scroll down, it remains stationary. And right at the bottom, it also has a footer. So the best practice is to design the headers and footers first. Now, every time we create a new page for this website, it will automatically place these headers and footers onto each page. So let's go back into Elementor and create our header and footer. To create the header, we need to exit out of this Elementor page. So we click on this toolbar here and we can exit. And that will take us to the backend of WordPress. Now I want to scroll down and go to Elementor templates. And if we just click on this all button here, we can see all the different types of templates we can actually create. So let's go into header. And we haven't actually created any headers for this website, which is great because we're going to create one now. So click on add new header and just give it a name. Great, and create template. One of the good things about Elementor, as soon as you create a new template, it gives you an option to use one of these predefined blocks. We're not going to do that for this page. We're going to create our own blocks ourselves. So let's X out of this. And now we're ready to create our header. So let's add a new container. And we're going to choose a double container. The reason being, we want this container to be in two halves. One half for the logo and the second half for the navigation and the button. So let's click onto this one here that has two columns in here. And what we need to do now is bring in an image for the logo. So let's click on these little 9 dots here to select the widgets. I'm going to go to basics and drag in a image widget. Now you can see there's no image available here, so we have to select one. To add our image, which will be the logo, we need to go over to this edit image panel and choose an image. So let's click on this and you can see that we haven't got any images for this website as yet. Okay, these are all of the images that we have in the media library. If we go over to upload files, we can actually drag our image, or in this case a logo, into this area box here, or we can actually click on select files to open up our images on our desktop or computer. So I believe it's this one here, so let's click onto that and open that up. And you can see the logo now appears in my media library. So let's click on select. You can see now the logo now appears there. Let's add all the other components for this header. So let's click on these 9 little dots here to open up the widgets. And we're going to bring in an icon widget. So if we can't find it, we can just search for it quite easily. Type in icon and we can bring in the list here, which is fine. And what we're going to do, we're going to create an inline. And let's give these icons a name. So I think it's about us. And the next one, I believe, is services. And the next one is contact us. Now, this isn't the best way to create a navigation, and we'll go through how to create a proper navigation later on, but we can just use it as placeholders now until we build out the additional pages. Now, I want to remove the icons. Right, that looks fine. And we can leave this for now. We can start everything in a minute. And what we also need is a button. So let's scroll down so you can find a button. And you can drag this button widget in here. Now, what we want to do is make sure that the button is actually beside the navigation. So let's just highlight this handle here, and we can actually change the direction of this cell. So now it appears there. Now, what you want to do is make sure that all the items within this container is actually at the end of the container here. So we can also look at justified end. which is fantastic. Okay, now it's beginning to come together. Now you can see that the navigation and the button is at the top of this component here. So let's click on the container in itself, and we want to centralize everything. So everything is actually inlined. So let's go to inline items and click on center, and you can see that everything's centered. Now everything is started to fall into place. So I know what you're thinking now is that the logo for this web page is miles too big. So let's reduce the size of this logo now. So let's click onto this logo item, and that will open up the editing panel. If we go over to style, we can actually change the size of this image. So I want to remove the percentage because this will give it a percentage value, and let's give it a pixel value, and we can change that to, I'll say 155. I think that's okay. And let's make sure that it's actually at the beginning of this column here. Okay, so if we go back to content, and we can actually change the alignment to left, and you can see that now it appears on the left hand side. Okay, so everything is starting to fall into place a little bit here. Now what we want to do is make sure that we have the correct width size for this website, and you can say it's controlled by the header. Now you can see the space between the logo here and the space between this button to the end. Okay, we can actually change the size of it. So if we move along here, we want to see the size of the page. Now if we highlight this, you can see that the container is set at a box value, and by default this is the value here. So we can change this. I'll say 100 and okay. Now if we wanted to do full width, what that will mean is that as you increase or decrease, it will always be 100% of the screen. Okay, so we don't want to do this now. We want to have this a box item and leave it at 1200 pixels wide. Okay, so you can see that that's the minimum size that it will appear, or the maximum I should say. The content width can be anything you desire. I like to use a 1200 by default, or I will just use full width. When building out other elements on the page, it's good to use the same content width so everything is actually uniform together. Now it's time to add some padding to this header. So while this is selected, we can go over to advanced, and you can see that the margin and padding values are blank. So we can just set them to 0, and let's just change the top padding here. Let's just give it 10 pixels. You can see that it's actually giving it 10 pixels from the top. And let's just give the bottom, let's do 10. Let's just give it 20 to give it a bit more room there. Okay. And what we can do, we can probably give it a little bit of padding on the left as well, and to the right. Great. Now it's time to style the button. So let's go over and click on the button here, and we'll open up the editing panel. Now we want to change the color and actually round the edges of this button. So let's go to style, and let's change the color. So I've got the color here, match. I want the color to kind of match as much as possible the orange within the logo. So I believe that's a decent enough match there. And what we want to do is actually create a radius. So where you see here, border radius, let's do it to 0. And we want to, to link these together, let's do 25 around. So now it's giving it a nice rounded border for this button. Okay. Now we want to change the text in here. So I think we've got get a free quote. Okay, so you can see that there, and we want to actually, because when you click onto this button, it should actually, if it's on a phone, bring up a dial pad so you can actually give them a call. So let's just make sure that is obvious. So we're going to go into the icons here, and we can click on the icon library, and let's search for a phone icon. So that's there, and insert that. So now we have the icon and the text here. Now, these texts here, I just want to change the typeface for the font within this button. So let's go to Style, and where it says Typography, let's find a font that we like. So Montserrat, I think that's great. And make sure that's a bit, the weight, so make it bold. Yeah, so that stands out a bit as well. So to match the typeface within the links, the navigation, let's also give that the same typeface. So let's click onto Style, where it says Text, and let's apply the same typeface to that. Okay, that's fine. So let's click onto this, and we want to see if we can actually get that aligned. You can see that it's not really falling in line. However, we are going to replace this navigation here with a proper nav, but this is only a placeholder. But even though it's a placeholder, let's make sure it looks quite nice. So I'm going to add some padding to the top here, so it brings in line with that. So let's give it a 10, so that falls in line. That's lovely. Okay, now we can see that we have the logo, we have the links, and we have the button already created. Now we need to add an action for this button. So as we said, when someone clicks onto this button, especially if they're on their mobile phone, it should open up a dial pad so they can actually call to actually get a free quote. So if you just click onto the button and go over to the editing panel and go to content, you can see that the link it's not really connected to anything. Well, what we can actually do, we can add a kind of dynamic value. Well, it's not really a dynamic value, but it has an action where it allows once it's clicked for the dial pad to open. So if you click on to this dynamic tag here, and we can scroll down under actions, we have contact URL. So what that will mean is it will actually, once clicked, it will go to a URL of choice, and we can say what type of link we want to apply. You can see all these different types of actions we can have. We can have email, tell, SMS, etc., even WhatsApp. But let's go for tell. Okay, and we can just pop in the number here. So if we say as a draft, and if we preview this, it should open up. Click on preview here, and if we click on here, you can see it's asking me to open up because I'm on my desktop device, open up Skype. Okay, so if you wanted someone to actually click on a button, especially from the mobile phone, to actually call you straight away, and that's one way how you can actually achieve that. Great. Now, one more thing around this button, we want to give it a bit more breathing space between the edges. Okay, so you can see it's quite a bit flat, so you want to kind of buff it out a little bit. So let's go back and click on, make sure we've selected the button. We go over to Style, and where we've added in the border radius values, underneath here it has a padding value here, and all of these are set to blank. So let's just give it a 0 and see what happens. You can see it's actually got no space between the text and the edges at all. Okay, so what we can do, we can actually increase this, and you can see that it's giving it some breathing room across. Now what I want to do is just add it 15, and we want to make the left a bit wider. Oops, the top on the left and the right wider than the top and bottom. So that's looking pretty good. Now let's click on save as draft, which is fine. Now we want to give it a little action. So when someone clicks on to this button, something action happens. So let's go back, select this button, and where it says hover here, okay, what we can do, we can add a little animation. So let's just do it pulses. You can see here, it gives you an indication that something will happen once you've clicked on this button. The next thing we want to do is to make sure that this header is sticky. So as you scroll up and down the page, the header should remain stationary. So we can actually see this in action. So if we create a new column, and let's just give that a color. So it's a random color so we can actually see in action here. And let's just throw in some text. Great, there's a placeholder. And so you can actually see this working. Let's just give it a height of, let's say, 1,000. Great. Okay. Now, if we preview this page, you can see as you scroll down, the header disappears. So what we want to do is make sure that this remains stationary. So let's just go back to Elementor and let's click on to this container, the header container here. We go to Advanced. If we scroll down, we will see a section called Motion Effects. In this section, you can see that you have an option to make this column sticky. So let's just give it a sticky value as top. Now, what this will mean is that this section here will actually be sticky on these devices. So you can actually remove or add any device that you like this to be sticky on. So as I scroll up and down, you can see that the area is actually sticky. However, the color is transparent. So as you scroll up and down, you can see that the color from the columns beneath it will actually appear over it. So what we can do is go back into this section and go into Style, and you can go into Background Type. You can see that it's transparent. So let's give it a white. So now as you go up and down, you can see that the column or the header remains stationary. You can preview this, so you can see this in a browser. We come out Elementor, and as you scroll up and down, you can see that the header remains stationary. Fantastic. Now let's just remove this section here, and what we're going to do now is make sure that we apply this header to every single page on our website. So next to this Publish button here, you can click on this arrow and we can click on Display Conditions, and we want to add a condition so it appears on the entire website. So let's click on Save. And now we have this header now set up and created, and which it will appear on every single page that we create within Elementor.